Welcome back. Today we're going to be starting Unit 4. We're going to be starting Unit 4 by talking about translating. Translating is taking words and turning them into numbers. So let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. So first things first, when we're talking about translating, we have some important words that are there to remember. So important words for us are going to be more than, less than, or subtracted from. Anytime that we see those words, we're going to know that that means to send that thing to the end. So when we're talking about building an expression, we're going to be building an expression, turning different letters and words into numbers. And if any time that we see more than, less than, or subtracted from, we know we're going to be moving that thing to the end. So let's see that play its role out as we're talking about addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Let's get to that right now. So now we're going to be talking about addition. So anytime that we see words for addition, words like sum, added to, deposit, plus, or increased, anytime we see those words, we know we're going to be talking about addition. Are these the only words that we're going to see that let us know that we're talking about addition? No, but these are some of the words that we're going to see most often when we're talking about addition. So the first example there says the sum of a number and 2. So as I can see, they've talked about the word sum, so I know that this is going to be an addition problem. And since the word number comes first, I know that that's going to be first. Now, since I don't know what the number is, I'm going to be using a variable. I'm going to be using the variable n in this case because I don't know. They didn't tell me what variable to use, and since they started with number, I'm going to use the letter n to represent that. And then the sum of number and 2, so n plus 2. Notice I put this plus 2 second because it came second when I saw it in the sentence. The next example says for more than a number x. So one of our important words there was more than. And since we see more than, that means that the 4 is going to be moving to the end of our expression. So we're going to be putting the 4 at the very end of our expression. And it says a number x. So this time it gave us the variable x. So we know we're going to be using x as our variable. So I'm going to have x plus 4. Notice I put the plus 4 at the end because the more than meant to send the 4 to the end. The last expression there I have is John has C cats, so they've told me the variable I'm going to use, it's going to be C, and adopts 7 more from a shelter. How many cats does he have? So since the variable came first, I know that I'm going to have C being the first thing that I talk about, and since I saw the word more, I know that I'm going to be talking about adding. So I'm going to have C plus 7 since it says that he's adopting 7 more cats. So C plus 7 is our expression. Let's move on to subtraction. So now we're going to be looking at expressions that talk about subtraction. So we've got some important words that deal with subtraction. So anytime I see subtract, difference, decrease, less, take away, withdraw, and minus, if I see any of these words, I know I'm going to be talking about subtraction. Now, are they the only words that deal with subtraction? No, but there are a lot of the common words that we're going to be using when we talk about subtraction. So let's take a look at our first example. It says 18 less than a number, and we've seen one of our important phrases, less than. So since we've seen less than, we know that that 18 is going to be moving to the end of our expression. So we know we have a number. They haven't told us what the number is, so I'm going to be using the variable n. And it says 18 less than, so I know the 18 is going to be moving to the back, so n minus 18. The next one says the difference of 2 and a number. Now again, I see the important word difference, so I know that I'm going to be talking about subtraction. The difference of 2 and a number, since the 2 came first, and I don't see any of those special phrases telling me to move it anywhere, I know that it's going to be 2 and a number, so 2 minus n. Again, they didn't give me the variable. I could pick any variable I wanted. Since I started with the letter n, I made the letter n the variable I chose. But you can pick any variable you want if they don't tell you which variable to choose. Stacy has D dollars in her bank account. Mario has $200 less than. Oh, there's that important phrase again. Before I go any further, I want to make sure that I highlight that less than. Stacy, how much more money does he have? So since he's going to have $200 less than, I know the 200 is going to go to the back or to the end. And since they gave me the variable D for dollars, I know I have to use that variable. So D minus 200. Notice the 200 went to the back because I saw that special phrase, less than. Let's move on to multiplication. So now talking about multiplication, we're going to be talking about some important words that mean multiplication. So anytime that we see product or multiply, times, double, triple something, per hour, all of those are going to be important indicators that we're going to be talking about multiplication. Now, these are not the only words that mean multiplication. They're just some of the most common words that we use for multiplication. So let's take a look at the first one. The first one says the product of a number y and 6. So since they told me that I have to use the number y, so they're telling me which variable to use, I see the word product, so I know that's going to be multiplication. So I'm going to have y times 6, and since the y came first, that's what's going to be first when I write it out. So y times 6. Now notice I put both numbers in parentheses right next to each other. That means multiplication. You could have used the multiplication x. You could have used the multiplication dot. You could have put y, 6y. All of those would have meant multiplication. I chose to put them both inside parentheses, but you can choose any way that indicates multiplication. Mark earns $45 per hour he works. So I see that important phrase, per hour, so I know that's going to be multiplication. He's going to earn $45 per hour. So I'm going to write that out as 45 times h. Again, I chose h. They didn't give us h as a variable. You could pick whatever variable you wanted, but since they were talking about hours, I picked the letter h. So 45 times h, and notice that time I used the multiplication dot. It doesn't matter which way you indicate multiplication. That's just the way I chose this time. Jeannie withdraws $30 per week from her bank account. How much does she withdraw after W weeks? So here I have two important words in here. I have the word withdraws, which you would think means subtract, and per week, which means multiplication. How much money does she withdraw after W weeks? So I know I've got the variable W. All of those things are important to know. So since I know that she's withdrawing $30, I know I'm going to have a negative amount of money. She's taking $30 away. So it's going to be negative 30. And since she's doing that per week, and I don't know how many weeks that is, it's going to be negative 30 times the number of weeks, which in this case is going to be W because that's what they gave us. So I have negative 30W. So negative 30 representing them losing $30 and then times W. Now notice I didn't put any multiplication dot or parentheses. Negative 30 next to the W indicates multiplication. So in each of these examples, I showed a different way to represent multiplication and all of them are correct. Let's go on to division. Now, when it comes to talking about division, we've got some important words that go with that. So anytime that I see the phrase division or divided by, divided, quotient, into groups evenly, or half, I know that I'm going to be dividing. So taking a look at our first example, we've got a number n divided by 4. So I see the important word divided, so I know that right away I'm going to be dealing with division. Now I've got n comes first. It told me which variable, and it said the letter n divided by 4. So since n came first, I know that's going to be on top. Or if I decided to use the division symbol, I know that would be the one that comes on the left. So since I saw n first, I know that that is the numerator. So whichever number I see first, that is the numerator. That's very important to remember. So whichever number comes first is the number that is the numerator. So in this case, I saw n first, so n is the numerator divided by 4. The next phrase, I have the quotient of a 5 and a number y. So again, I see the important phrase quotient, so I know that I have division. And since I see 5 first, I know that 5 will be my numerator and y will be my denominator since the y came second. So I'm going to write that as 5 divided by y. Now notice I wrote it completely differently than the first one, but I wrote the 5 first since I saw it first. So whatever I see first, either right on top or on the left, it doesn't matter which way you write your division, but you have to remember whichever came first is the numerator. George has 118 pieces of candy. He divides them evenly among his friends. So we see divides them evenly among F friends. So they gave us a variable. How much does each friend get? So again, since I saw the 118 first, I know that has to be my numerator and F came second. So that's my denominator or it comes second. So I'm going to write it as 118 divided by F, and that is another way to show division. So again, I've shown 3 different ways to write division here. All of them are correct, and since I remember to write my numerators first, whatever I saw first, so I saw n first, that came first. I saw 5 first, then that came first, and I saw 118, and that came first. So it's very important to remember the first thing you see is the numerator. Let's try some mixed practice. So now we have some examples that we have to try A through C. So the first one says 5 less than the quotient of a number n and 3. So now we've got some mixing of different operations that are taking place here. So I see that I've got 5 less than, so I know that's important. I see quotient, that's important then. So I know that I have multiple things happening here. Since I see the less than, that's one of those important phrases that lets me know the 5 is going to the end of whatever else I'm doing. So I'm going to have that minus 5, and that's going to be at the end of my expression. Now I'm going to be dividing, and it says the quotient of a number and 3. And since I see the number n, that comes first, and 3 comes second, I know that my numerator is going to be n, and my denominator is going to be 3, since I saw the n first. And notice that's going to go to the front of my expression, because the 5 less than pushed that to the back. So now I have an expression that is n divided by 3 minus 5, or 5 less than the quotient of a number n and 3. Let's take a look at the next example. The next example says 6 times the sum of a number n and 4. So I've got a couple things going on here, some important phrases to look at. I've got times, so I know multiplication is going on. I got sum, that's important to know what's going on. And I've got this fancy word there, of. So I've got of there, and that's going to mean something completely different. So I've got 6 times, so I know I'm going to be multiplying something. The sum of a number n and 4. So since I saw the n first, I know that's going to be n plus 4. However, if I leave it written like this, then what's going to happen when I follow the order of operations is I'm going to be multiplying 6 times n first, because multiplication would come before addition. But I don't want to multiply 6 times n first. I want to do 6 times the sum of the number of n and 4. So I've got to figure out how to make sure that I do the n plus 4 first. Well, in order to follow the order of operations, the only way to make that happen is to add some parentheses. So I'm going to add some parentheses around the n and the 4, so that I know that gets added first, and then I multiply by the 6. And the indicator that gave to me that I needed to make sure to do that was that word of. So anytime I see that word of, I got to ask myself, do I need parentheses or not? It's very tricky to figure out when you do or when you don't. The easiest way to figure it out is to determine what you want to multiply by. If you want to multiply the 6 and the n, you don't need parentheses. If you want to multiply the 6 times whatever the n is added to, then you need parentheses. Let's look at the last one. The last one says Elise babysits after school. She charges a base fee of $15 plus $8 per hour. She works. How much money does she earn after 8 hours? So we got some important phrases there. We know that she charges $15 plus something and $8 per hour. So how much money does she earn after 8 hours? Well, we know that she earns $15 plus whatever she does. So we're going to put out our 15 plus, because whatever she's going to do, she's adding $15 to it automatically. Then she's going to make $8 per hour. We know the per hour means multiply. So she's going to make $15 plus 8 times the number of hours she works, or 8h. You could have written the 8 and the h in parentheses. You could have written the 8 with the dot in between the h. All of those would have been correct. I wrote 8h. So 15 plus 8 times h. That's how much money she's going to make. Now let's try a few on your own. Here are a few practice problems for you to try on your own. I want you to try each of them, do the best that you can, pause the video now, and then press play again to see if you are right. So how did you do? Were you able to get all of the answers correct? Notice that last one's a little tricky because it doesn't use any of those common words that we talked about. That's what I'm talking about. Sometimes there will be common words that you can identify, and sometimes not so much. You just have to ask yourself what's going on in the situation and what makes the most sense here. That brings us to the end of this video. If you like this video, go ahead and throw us a thumbs up. If you love this video, go ahead and throw us a sub, and we will catch you in the next one.